two types of gear stick linkages on Hondas. The cables and this sort, which is the steel rod. And guys quite commonly have problems undoing this linkage here from the gearbox. I've seen in professional mechanic shops motors and gearboxes on the floor with this rod still attached because the mechanics haven't been able to figure out how on earth to undo it. So I thought I'd just run you through what's involved. It's fairly straightforward. This collar with a hole in it goes on the shaft with a hole in it, and a pin goes through the two of them. This pin is held in place by this spring band, but the band is not the problem, it's easily removed. The problem is this pin. You'll notice it's quite thick and it's actually made of spring steel, and it's designed to exert pressure outwards, and that's what locks it in place. The problem that guys have is they come along with a nail punch and they put it inside the hole and try and hammer it in, and what that does is it expands that out and jams it in place. So the more you hammer with a punch with a taper on it, the more that's going to get jammed in. This punch would actually do the job quite well if you use it upside down. The punch that I use is an old whole leather punch that it's chamfered itself over the years through use, but that just fits in the hole, or sometimes I've used it up the other way. You've got to use a punch that's got a flat end on it that fits that tube. This is 6mm or 1/4 inch diameter rod, and once you've got a tool like this, I put red paint on and stick it in my toolbox and keep it as a special tool just for one job. Now check this out, I've undone the bolt from the bottom wishbone, and this hole is already ovallised just through normal wear and tear on the road. So putting that plate over the top is really going to be necessary, and that's a 5mm thick plate, more than twice as thick as what the original factory unit was. So I'll bolt that on and weld it all the way around. I've just tacked up a bar between the strut towers, which serves two purposes. One is it's the seatbelt mounting points for both harnesses, and it also serves as a stiffener between the two strut towers. I've started running the main wiring loom, most of which is inside, and then it comes through here to the main engine bay fuse box. On the Prelude, this was up here, but obviously there's not enough room there on the Integra, so it's going there. I've had to stretch that a bit, but we're going to get there. Have to enlarge that hole. I will seal that hole with windscreen sealant, make sure it doesn't leak. The brake reservoir, you can see, is just plug and play. Everything matches up perfectly. And now I'm wiring up and soldering the wires for the wiper motor, which is pretty straightforward. There's 5 wires and they're all colour coded. If you're doing electrical work, for goodness sake, make sure you solder your joints properly. Never just twist them on a loom and leave them. And then the other thing I do is I put heat shrink over the top rather than masking tape, and that'll seal that joint right up nice and tight. By doing that, you're saving yourself having problems further down the track. Now all those wires are soldered and heat shrunk, I'll rewrap the loom with electrical tape, and once again this is just saving problems further down the track, particularly on a rally car where you get a lot of vibration and you don't want wires rubbing. Plus I just like things to look nice and neat. There you go, you wouldn't even know that joint was there. And I'll rewrap all of this and get it nice and tidy. I've run the Prelude wiring loom in from the hole in the firewall up through here, knowing exactly where to put it because of the labels that I attached to it. And it's going to come down here. The computer's probably going to go somewhere there. I've got these orange plugs which were connected to the ABS unit. Now if you're a fanatic about weight, you might take all these wires out of the wiring loom. I prefer to just tape the things up and leave them there. And likewise, whatever this doohickey is, I don't know what it is. It could be the sunroof, it could be something to do with the engine, you just never know. So I'll just tape that in place and leave that there. And they're the wires that go to the door. They'll need to be joined, and I'll put a plug on there probably, unlike the factory setup. I've run the near side loom through the firewall. These are the 4 plugs that go to the connectors on the engine. This was the boot that was on the Prelude's loom, and I would have had to make this hole ridiculously large. All these fittings went through the factory hole, so I've cut the boot and off the Integra loom, which I've kept, and now I'm just going to seal that up, and it'll be as good as new. No need to cut a big hole if you don't need to cut a big hole. Instead of running the second loom that goes down the left hand side of the car out through the side of the car and down inside the guard, I've gone through the firewall with it, cut a new hole, run it round here where it went on the factory setup, and it's got the headlights and so forth on it. All these orange plugs, they're all ABS brakes, so I'm going to chop those off, and I'll heat shrink over all the ends so there's no short circuit. And there's a heavy wire in there. I'd say that's a main power wire, and I might be able to use that for driving lights or something like that, so I'll keep that one out, but all the rest can go. So just a little bit of heat shrink on the end of every one of these wires. We'll just seal them up and eliminate any possibility of an electrical short through a stray loose wire. This is the sort of stuff that takes time. Like I said, you're saving yourself hassles further down the track by doing it properly in the first place. All those loose ends now are completely sealed, and the connectors to the trafficator and the windscreen washer, the plugs are correct for what's already there, so that's literally just plugged straight in. I finished running all the wiring looms on the left side of the car inside. That's the loom that I said that I put out through the firewall rather than out through there, which has got the headlights and so forth on it. And that's the joining plug for it, for all those connectors. That's that thingamajig, I don't know what it is. There's the computer mounted on a plate that I've made, and it's up nice and high, right away from all the water. We've got tons of room here to put the roll cage in, so nothing's going to foul. So all that's done now. This is where the battery was on the Prelude, but I'm not going to put it there. When I do these Honda swaps, I always relocate the battery into the driving compartment to make more room in the engine bay and to shift some of the weight back. So I'm going to run a cable from the main engine fuse box all the way around here, and it'll go out through the firewall where the heater used to be. When I'm fitting this, I'll completely cover it in an extra level of garden hose to make it super insulated, and I'll put a rubber grommet there. This sort of stuff I get on a regular basis when I wreck cars, because tyros that put audios in run it through the car, so it's a great pickup when you wreck a car. So the main power supply, running power this way, will come through the firewall, along the top of the tunnel. There'll be a battery isolator switch there that the driver can get to kill power straight away in any emergency. And then this cable will go up to the battery, which will either be behind where the seat's going to go, or depending on the regulations this car's going to run under, we might have to put it up here. It'll go inside a acid spill proof box. I found the ideal tubing for double insulating this battery cable. This is the plastic tubing that used to drain the sunroof. Perfect size and fit, and very strong. Freebie! The fuel pump in most Hondas, Civics and Integras, is underneath the back seat. The reason I'm taking this out is because I'm going to upgrade the fuel pump. We could use the standard one, but we're going to want to run this engine flat out, and we're going to drive the injectors flat out when we're putting a Pexi piggyback computer on it. And using the standard pump, I've had the car run out of petrol in the past. So one of the other standard upgrades that I do is to change the pump. And this is one I had in a previous race car. Hasn't done much work at all. This is a 250 litre per minute high flow Wildbro pump. You could run a V8 with this, and so I'll swap that out and put this one in. It'll just fit straight into the standard bracket, and we'll have a mega high flow fuel pump in the tank. On the bench you can see how the Wildbro pump, high flow pump, is physically bigger, although overall dimensions it's very, very close in size to the factory pump, and thankfully it will go on the factory bracket. All I'll need to do is attach the factory tank filter to the bottom with that little circlip. Don't forget, if you're doing a performance upgrade, to think about upgrading your fuel pump. There's a Wildbro pump mounted on the factory bracket. So in the tank she can go. And fuel pressure is one problem we're not going to have with this car. This is the loom on the right hand side of the car, and I've just spliced it in through the hole where the stuff to the door goes rather than make a second hole. Run it along the top of the frame there, and this right hand loom comes down with the headlights and the front parkers, and they're probably just going to plug directly into the lights. We've got the trafficator wire there, and most importantly the radiator fan wire. I'll run this loom down behind the headlight and across the front there. That completes the running and transferring of the looms from the Prelude to the Integra, and as you can see, it wasn't all that complicated. I'm sure it's the sort of thing you could do yourself.